We would like to welcome you to this informative webinar. This is part 3 of the AgileDad Gives Back Live free webinar series, and I am joined by two very dear friends and by two people who are experts, respectively, in the different frameworks that they're here representing. So today we're going to have a roundtable discussion with the three of us, and we're going to talk a little bit about the different frameworks. So we're going to talk about Scaled Agile. We're going to talk about the Stable framework. We're going to talk about some of the Scrum Alliance offerings. They have some new exciting things. And we're just going to get, so the big part of this, the most important part, is that the reason you're here. So the reason you're here is so that you can submit your questions. So in this format that we're currently using, you have the ability to drop questions in a Q&A panel. So we hope and encourage you to please actively use that Q&A panel, drop your questions in, and we would love to answer those questions. We're going to have little segments, and we'll have a break to answer questions, and then we'll do a second segment. So that's kind of the format of how things are going to flow. So today I'm joined by Heidi. Heidi, how are you?
Hey Lee, how's it going?
Going really well. And John, good to see you. How are you, man?
Howdy, Lee.
Excellent.
Doing well.
So I want to kick things off right out of the gate with some value. So let's do this. So one of the things that I've noticed as far as the certification community, as far as just the different framework community is concerned, is that right about now, I think we're hitting that wall where we're seeing things that are like a dime a dozen. There are a lot of spin-off offerings. There are a lot of crazy things going on out there. In fact, I had one of my students that gave me this quote, and this is kind of how I want to open our conversation. She told me, she says, sometimes I don't know what to do. And I said, what do you mean? She goes, well, she said, I go and look for a certification or something I feel like would benefit me online. She says, I find one that I'm interested in. She says, and then when I go to look, she says, I try to compare to be a good shopper. I try to compare prices. I try to compare reviews. She says, and what I discover is that sometimes there's something that almost looks too good to be true. You know, there's a $49 certification, whatever the case may be, right? And it comes with a free set of Ginsu knives, and you get a t-shirt for attending. You know, it's one of those kind of things, right? And what she discovered, and this was her exact words, and I loved it. She says, sometimes when you go to Walmart, the great value brand's okay, but sometimes it's just not. So the question that I want to lead in with is each of these certification bodies, whether it's Scaled Agile Inc., whether it's the Stable Institute, or whether it's the Scrum Alliance, each of these bodies have nuances or unique pieces to them. So what I want to do is I want to have a quick time box discussion, and I'm going to let each of you have an opportunity to speak first. I'll talk about who's first, second, and third. And I just want to know what you've seen as, if I asked you to identify who the ideal audience that would use your framework. And it can be generic. It doesn't have to be anything too deep. I know that we all have had experience applying this in DoD things and stuff along those lines. I don't necessarily want to go into the detail. I just want to talk about high level, different types of organizations that benefit, and maybe call out one nuance or one specific thing you've noticed where you've said, you know, for example, Scrum Alliance application has been really effective in XYZ application, right? So if you have just a specific nuance or something that you feel like, you know, this is one of those things that's exceptional, where it happens exceptionally well. Now, in all fairness, John is with a Stable framework in the Stable Institute, and that is probably the newer or the newest of the three, right? So for him, he may have a little more, how should I put it, current examples that he can share. And I'm going to ask him to try the best he can to, you know, give us a good understanding of what Stable is, because I think a lot of people who are on a call may not know what Stable is. So even if you want to open up with like 30 to 60 seconds about what Stable is and then go into the question, I'm fine with that. And the same is true with Scaled Agile, to give everybody a fair shake. Yes? Okay.
All right.
So
Well,
John,
thanks,
I'm going to let you kick it off. Go for it.
Thanks, Lee. So yeah, Stable is one of the newer ones. In fact, I think it is the new player. Stable fills a niche that in quality and in the organizations that you feel like you're constantly running around with your hair on fire, jumping out of an airplane without a parachute. It's those types of situations. It allows and it creates a framework to adjust for those things. I've been doing Agile for a long time, and a lot of what Stable gives me is the tools, and we can talk about that, but an example is in current development shops, You're looking at people who are doing support. They're getting grenades thrown at them. They're also responsible for planning. They're also responsible, and Stable gives them some tools that I have not seen before that allows them to handle that and produce quality, produce value, and it's sustainable. And that is its niche. It's still agile. The core concepts are there, but Stable has a broad reach of tools that help you with firefighting.
Okay, so it sounds like firefighting is one of the key pieces.
Uh-huh.
One of the other pieces that I've noticed about Stable, just to support what you're saying, and we sort of had this conversation ahead of time, is that I see it almost as a bridge. That a lot of people who are doing just traditional agile frameworks, one of the things they're struggling with right now is that when they go into an organization where there's regulatory compliance, anything along those lines, what ends up happening is the team wants to run as lean as possible. The organization has to still meet all these regulatory and compliance needs. And you end up with what I call disparate or broken framework, because there's no good tool to bridge across that gamut, that gap, right? So for me, I almost see Stable, and I also am a Stable trainer, so I also see Stable as kind of a bridge between the two. And it's not replacing that. I love the way you pointed that out, John. It's not replacing anything. So it's not like replacing Scaled Agile. It's not replacing Scrum certification. It is almost like something that you use, and no pun intended, to stabilize what you already are doing. It's something that's going to add value to what you're already doing. All right, so Heidi, I know you are an expert, in my opinion, on Scaled Agile, and I know you're on your journey to be a SPC trainer. So why don't you do the same thing for us and share just a little background about Scaled Agile, just in case someone doesn't know, and what are the nuances and where are the best places to apply?
Awesome. So thank you for having me. This is a great opportunity to speak with you all about the Scaled Agile framework. There's a lot of history with it, and it really started with Dean Leffingwell writing a book all about, I can't remember the actual book, but writing all about agile development and his process and thinking through that. And then it's gone through many iterations through the years as we align with that relentless improvement concept. And so really where Scaled Agile excels is in environments where you need to go beyond 50 people and even to large programs. And a lot of the really cool things with Scaled Agile is their quarterly planning event, which we call it quarterly at my company. But it's really your program increment planning, or which they've now changed to planning intervals, as they've constantly iterated and using that relentless improvement. And what is so great about this planning interval concept is you're really bringing everybody together and planning the work that you're going to do for the next 8 to 10, 12 weeks, and really planning out the work you're going to do and committing together and looking for all those dependencies that you have across your organization within your Agile release train. And so that's one of the things that I think I would say is their bread and butter, is the thing that makes them special. And then they have the ability to go beyond that, where you scale between one Agile release train to solutions, as well as how to run your company using lean portfolio management. So they have a few things that they've brought in from other things like Scrum Alliance with, the Scrum. I mean, Scrum is great, and we utilize those concepts. And so they really bring a lot of great best practices together.
I love the way you pointed that out. So Heidi, the two books, the first one was Managing Software Requirements, a Unified Approach. That one was published in 2000. And then the second was Scaling Software Agility, and that was 2007. And that was kind of the precursor from Dean for both of those. Exactly. And I remember 2007. I didn't remember the one from 2000, but I remembered the 2007 book because that book came out shortly after he and I had a conversation at a conference. So we were actually sitting at a table together talking about this, and it was funny because as a result of our conversation, it was one of those times where I left scratching my head looking at it and saying, that book clearly resembles a lot of the conversation that we were having. So it was almost like the impetus for Scaled Agile came from a conversation, which I thought was really, really cool. And I don't want to take any credit. That's not what I'm trying to do at all. What I'm saying is that Dean has a knack for really pulling in the bits and pieces from different places and putting together something. And I love that you focused on release trains and solution trains. That to me is the bread and butter of SAFe. So if you're doing Scaled Agile and you can map things, and truth be told, every team and organization where I go in and coach, I see that you have some people who are working on new features, some people working on enablement, some people working on enhancements. They got 2 things they have to clean up on this product. They got something over here. And the teams are so spread out that there's a concept of a team backlog that allows you to see everything that the team could be working on, even if it's across a sprint that's running 2 weeks odd on this side and 2 weeks even on this side. You can see all the work in one place, so you can make sure you're not over allocating people. So it really does help you with concepts of lean UX and limiting WIP. So it helps you pull that together. But then I love how it all rolls up into increments and falls into a release train. I just think that is genius, because that is the best way for you to manage and govern work at that level. So thanks for sharing. I just thought that was amazing. So very good preview. So I'm going to represent Scrum Alliance. And what I can tell you is Scrum Alliance has been around since the advent of time. They were one of the forerunners, or one of the first to do this. We can go all the way back to Takuchi and Nanaka, the new product game. And this was introduced in the late 90s, early 2000s. And it was first implemented by Jeff Sutherland at Easel Corp. But I'm not here to give you a history lesson. What I want to do is talk about where Scrum Alliance is, where they're going, and what I've seen. And his first statement that I'm going to give you is probably going to shock you. If you do pure Scrum, you are going to pure fail. I'm going to say that again. If you do Scrum exactly as the book says you should, you're going to fail. Unless you're a startup company where you got 7 people and you got 4 developers and a couple of testers and someone who's a product, okay, yeah, you stand a chance of doing pure Scrum and succeeding, because you're just so small that it'll work. But the problem is, what I've seen is whenever you try to apply Scrum in a more enterprise environment, whenever you try to apply Scrum in any environment that requires scaling, 2 things happen. One, there's not enough, even if you do the large enterprise scaled Scrum, I don't know that there's enough structure around it that supports leadership expectations. And 2, I don't know if there's enough stability around the topic of hidden factory, which is a big topic in stable, where you're not committing the same offenses over and over again. One of the things that I always point out about Scrum is that every iteration, every sprint, you could start out with bring me a rock. And the assumption is that the product owner has already done their due diligence and knows exactly what rock to bring, when in actuality, that's not normally the case. The product owner will say, okay, the key stakeholder has said we need a rock, and they send a team out to get a rock, and well, that's not the right rock. It needs to be bigger. So you go get another rock. That's not the right rock. It has rough edges. So you go get another rock. That's not the right rock. It needs to be sedimentary, not igneous or metamorphic, right? And then finally, I don't know what's scary, that I remembered the 3 different rock types. Anyway, but then you bring this just beautiful sedimentary rock in, and it meets all the requirements, but then someone turns around and says the customer's needs have changed. They no longer need a rock. They need a stick, right? So there you are. By the time you get through it all, it's like the loop. But I want to make sure that I'm properly representing the one really cool thing about Scrum certification and Scrum Alliance. So while I've identified that in many cases, Scrum Alliance certifications didn't start out as all-inclusive, one of the things that I love about what they've done is they've created a path for growth. So if you are a Scrum Master, or if you are a product owner, there's an advanced certification, there's a CSP certifications, there's a 3rd level. And then some of the new certifications, those are my favorite. So without replacing Scaled Agile, they've come up with their own Scrum Alliance scaling certification. Now, the beauty of this is that it is a great fundamental or foundational course that I think everyone should take from an agnostic point of view before they dive into SAFe, only because I think that once they get into SAFe, they'll see the big picture and they'll understand how everything works better together. And I just think that it's a good bridge. If you were to take that scaled class and then go take a stable class, I think likewise, it will show you, it'll tie together some of the loose pieces, because a lot of times there's an expectation that you'll know things at a certain level before you jump in. The other certification that's brand new that I'm excited about is the Agile Coaching Skills Certified Facilitator. That one is amazing. There are only a small handful, less than 10 people in the world that offer that certification. And I have 2 of those classes coming up. No, but shameless plug. But what I can tell you is that certification, I feel, is really the gold standard. And how do I put this? It doesn't overshadow, but it highlights all the things you need to know. It doesn't matter whether you're doing scaled, agile, stable, Scrum. You could be doing anything. And it just gives you those facilitation keys that are going to really help you unlock your fullest potential. So I guess what I'm trying to say in a nutshell is that some of the basic Scrum Alliance certifications, while they're still good and they're still necessary in order for you to get the advanced certifications, are starting, I don't want to say they're outdated, but they're starting to become commonplace in the workplace. So if you're trying to accelerate your career, it's time for you to start looking at either advanced Scrum Alliance options or scaled Agile options or even stable options. Because I think that right now we found that if you're just doing the basic stuff, it's not going to be enough. So I don't see any questions yet. I want to remind everyone that the Q&A is open. So let's make sure we pop some questions in there. So I'm gonna go to question number 2 real quick. So
wait, before you jump to that, Lee,
please go ahead.
Something that you really brought up and I really appreciated was that Scrum Alliance has a really great foundation.
Yeah.
And that foundation is really what you need before you scale. And I'll tell you a quick story. I know for me, I took a Agile class within my corporate organization. And then I went and jumped in and took the SPC class. I just jumped in feet deep. And I was way over my head at that time because I didn't have the foundation. And so what Scrum Alliance does a really good job is giving you that foundation. So then when you start thinking about how do I go beyond one team, it really allows you to do that. And you can understand the big picture and you can go, oh, this is how this works together. And it just makes sense. And so I also look forward to those new certifications that Scrum Alliance came out with. Because, part of my thought is continuous and relentlessly improving. And how can I do that? It's by learning from others.
And I love that Scaled Agile takes you there. That's one of the big foundation principles of Scaled Agile, that you're in a path of continual learning, that you're always trying to improve, you're always trying to grow. And I think that that's incredible. Looks like we got our first question. So let's hit this question first, and then we'll go back to my question if needed. So Jeanette asks, what path would you recommend with these courses and certifications? Is there any kind of path for do this first, do this second, do this third? And I think that's a great question. And I think Heidi kind of laid the first part out for you. So I'm going to just reiterate what she said, and then I'm going to let them take off with the answer to this. As far as the foundational path is concerned, I do believe that whether you're talking about scaled Agile, stable, or just going through Scrum Alliance classes, they all start with a foundation of some Scrum principles. All 3 start with Scrum. So I tell people when they come to my Scrum classes, it's almost a prerequisite that you take a foundational level Scrum class just to make sure you understand the roles and responsibilities, that you understand the basic terminology that's going to be used, and you understand the basic nuances of how Agile works. And it's not going to give you a whole lot, but it's going to give you that baseline information. I think more than anything, what I've learned is that within organizations, they've hired people from all over the place and they all have learned how to do Agile differently. So a foundations class, notice I called it foundations and not fundamentals because I don't want it to be the basic stuff, but the foundations is going to help everybody get on the same page. And then once you have everyone on the same page, then it's important to know what direction you're trying to go with your company. And this is where the nuances come in. Are you going through things where you have heavy regulatory and auditory and compliance related things that are going to require you to have a real good quality management system? Are you at a point where you understand the basics of Agile and you're ready to scale? Your company's ready to scale and you've hit that crossroads and you're noticing that the things you've learned in your basic Agile classes just isn't good enough and you need to take some of those scaled Agile classes. Mm-hmm. That's where you kind of hit, the next step. So from a Scrum Alliance perspective, the answer is you take the foundations level class, choose whether you're going to be a team member, a Scrum Master, or a product owner, and then take the role-based certifications as a way to advance up. Once you feel like you're going into a leadership track, that's where I often say you need to jump in right away and take that the coaching skills facilitator class. That's where you're going to get the best value, because I really do believe that new class is the one that bridges people who are doing the everyday Scrum Master or project manager work to really fall into a leadership role. And I know they have a leadership track, but I feel like the leadership track, and I'm just going to say it, is weak. I feel like the stronger track is going through the facilitator because it incorporates all the best pieces from the leadership track without you having to sit through 6 days of leadership training with the Scrum Alliance. But that's if you're just strictly staying Scrum Alliance. What I can tell you is many people take the level 1 Scrum Master class, level 2 Scrum Master class, and then they quickly realize, or level 1 product owner, level 2 product owner, and they quickly realize, okay, we're at a point where we're scaling, and they jump over and do scaled Agile. Or they'll say, okay, we're at a point where we need something that's going to satisfy, especially if you're in government setting, something that's going to satisfy all the legal, regulatory, all that stuff. And that's where people start dabbling in stable and saying, hey, this is where we need to go. So I'm going to pass back to you real quick. What does that path look like from a scaled agile perspective? And then when you're done, you can just push it straight over to John and we'll get the same answer from him regarding stable.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that SAFE does really well is they have a SAFE for Teams class, which when you're launching an Agile release train or a solution train, that is the foundation, which are the fundamentals that Lee was talking about inside of the Scaled Agile framework. So really starting there is a great way to get your base foundation, and then really thinking about, what role am I playing? Am I a team member? Am I a leader? Am I a Scrum Master, product owner, product manager? And really going down the path of that role-based training. They have a really great model for that. And then going from there to, maybe I need to learn about the roles that I'm supporting. So if I'm a Scrum Master, I've gone through the Scrum Master training, I know all this great stuff. And now I need to really better understand what my product owner needs to do. So we send a lot of our Scrum Masters to product owner training so that they can be the help and support and the expert to help their product owners and product managers build out that backlog. And then when it comes to leaders, really, starting with the conversation of, the principles. Going back to the SAFE principles, having, initial conversation there, doing potentially an executive workshop, and then jumping into leading SAFE. And one thing we've been, dabbling with is running some of our change agents or, middle management through our implementing SAFE course and really helping them because they have the authority to drive the change in the organization. So those are a couple of things that I really think and like to do and have found some good success with. John, what about you with Stable Framework?
With Stable, it has a 2-hour online course. It's at the entry level. It's an associate course. So it gives you the basics of not only what Stable is, but just the basics of Agile. Again, roles, responsibilities, and how it fits. And it does give you the role. They have a Master Chief, which is the leading SAFE, if you want to talk about that, the leading SAFE class. But it has that same structure to come up. You can be a Scrum Master, you can be a product owner. It does have a process owner class, which I find very interesting because that gets into what Lee was talking about of this, are we going to scale? Can we support the scale? And it has a different, if you look at SAFE, it has a little bit different path, but that again it's a bolt-on. And I want to reinforce that it's a bolt-on because of other Agiles. Stable gives you a set of tools that I have not seen in some of the other frameworks. And especially if you're in a corporate environment that is publicly traded, or you're in a governmental environment where you have rules and responsibilities and you have audits. Constant audits. Stable helps very much with CMMI, ISO 9000. And I have had experience recently in a company that went public and wasn't ready, a corporation, and we had audit findings almost immediately. We didn't have a good audit process. We did not have good documentation, and Stable has all of that lined up. Now we were already at scale, so it was a challenge for that, but it has these, Stable has these career pieces of this is where you fit, and these are what you need to know to do your job.
So you mentioned that it has, speaking specifically about Stable for a minute, you mentioned that it has things that are bolt-on, that are additional to what the other Agile frameworks offer. Can you give us an example maybe of one of the bolt-ons? It doesn't have to be, super detailed, but maybe what's one of the things that you would see that Stable would provide that would be beneficial that doesn't come pre-wrapped in SAFE or Scrum Alliance certifications? What's one of the things that you would say is a standout feature, a standout bolt-on? Why would people consider? Because I think right now a lot of people are kind of scratching their head saying, why do I need something extra? What is the piece that you would say is like the flagship bolt-on that would make Stable stand out?
The one I carry with me is the Kata card. The Kata card is a checklist. You might call it, some people would call it production readiness, but it's a checklist. And every application will have a kata card, or every process will have a kata card. And it says, you know, it's a lot like tech support, the decision tree on the tech support call, where did you plug in your computer? Did you, no, it's not your DVD drive is not a cup holder. Those type of things. And it keeps trying to funnel down the discussion. The kata card is the same thing. For example, if you're going into production, did you get the DBA sign off? Did you get the data architect sign off? Is there a backout plan? Did you look at this patch, which last time we did this, that server didn't have the updated patch. All of the failures, and you continue to add to that card, and it follows every process that it needs to go through. And that for me is key. It even says, the ones that I'm using even says, who did the sign-offs and where are they for each piece. That helps with the audit process. So if you have that checklist, that for me, as part of stable, is key.
We have a follow-up from Facebook Live, so I want to make sure I ask you while I got you on.
Mm.
So the follow-up from Facebook Live is, great conversation. How is the kata card different than standard acceptance criteria? Because they feel like it's just a duplication of acceptance criteria, that all these things should be documented on any story or in any backlog item.
That is a really good question. Yeah, and the kata card is different, and it is part of the processes. And what happens in a lot of situations that I've found, and I've been 30 years in tech, is that the same mistakes happen over and over again. The same things get left out. People change, they go into new roles. There's a lot of, transformation, layoffs, let's be honest. And so that tribal knowledge disappears. The kata card is something that continues, and all of that tribal knowledge stays there. And you don't have to go, well, Lee was the guy that did all this. He got a big job somewhere else, so I don't know. And so you make that mistake. And that is the key. Acceptance criteria is more along the lines of, does it work, and does it meet what I want from the stakeholder? Kata cards is more system oriented.
Got it. So that's a good answer. So Heidi, when it comes to scaled agile, if I asked you to identify one thing that separates, one, kind of like he was mentioning, the nuance of the kata card, what's one thing about scaled agile that people, if I were in the market shopping for a certification, here, I'm even going to build on what he said, because I love what John said. So I think this will lead into another conversation. There are a lot of people getting laid off right now, specifically in agile roles, which is kind of scary. How is Scaled Agile prepared to help people so that they can either weather the layoff, or what is it that's going to give them, how is that certification going to help them stay engaged in their role, or help them find a new role if they were a victim of the cuts that have been happening? What have you seen?
Yeah, there's a lot of demand for organizations looking for safe certifications. Because a lot of our large enterprises have to scale. And part of what I think from my perspective is that people who can pass their exams, first off, congratulations, their exams are challenging. And so you really have to have the knowledge and the understanding to be able to implement. And so from my perspective, it opens the door that way, as well as there is a really great community inside of the Scaled Agile framework. For asking questions and job opportunities and things like that. They post it within their community. And so that also is a great opportunity for those who are in that environment to look for that. To me, the biggest thing from their certifications that I really love is their resources that they have and the knowledge platform that they have and share. There's so many opportunities to grow and learn within what they have on their platform. And so by having their certifications, it helps that way. One of the things, to answer the other part of your question was, what's unique about them? I really go back to PI planning. I know there's lots of organizations that are doing things that are similar nowadays, but when that first came out, that was huge. PI planning really changed the way things were done. And from my perspective, the dependency mapping and the planning boards, to be able to map your dependencies out, that's where we fall short a lot. Is we forget those dependency conversations, we forget mapping it out. And yes, maybe it looks like a board of string and numbers and sticky notes, but it really helps you to look through those dependencies and make sure we meet the critical path and we meet our acceptance. I think the final thing is, I will say, the confidence vote, which I know lots of people use as well. That confidence vote, to be able to push back and say, you know what, we really can't accomplish this, and have that conversation and really plan realistically. Because sometimes we kind of feel pressured to do that. And the mindset and the framework is really aligned to be able to say, you know what, I'm the one, let's not plan this. Let's do some changes so we can do the right thing and actually meet our commitments.
In all fairness, so I recently did one of these webinars and we were talking about either finding a new job in 2024 or maintaining your current job in 2024, and what are some things that you could do. And one of the things that I pointed out was we had our friends at Indeed and a couple of other places provide us with some data so that we could kind of see how many Agile jobs were available in the workspace and what type of certifications they were looking for. And overwhelmingly, it was interesting. There was an overwhelming number. Anytime large-scale enterprise organizations were asking for people who were familiar with scaling, I would say close to 90% of the time they were asking for SAFe certifications, which I thought was interesting. But overall, if you were just looking at the full Agile picture, the number one most requested certifications were the Scrum Alliance certifications. And I think part of it is just because it was the de facto, it was the industry standard for so long that that's what people are looking for. It's not saying that it's better than, but what it's proving or what it's reinforcing is the exact conversation we just had, that the Scrum Alliance certifications are good because the hub of all of these other frameworks, the hub of Stable, the hub of SAFe, is the Scrum wheel, right? Where we're going through and we have a product owner, we have a product backlog. We have a Scrum team or a development team that is going to be building the product or service. We've got Scrum masters that are going to help us engage. And that's the same in all three. So that's one of the things that are similar that all three come together and provide. But what I'm finding in the workforce right now is that anyone who has a base level certification, I don't care whether it's the Safe for Team certification, whether it's the basic process owner certification, or the associate, I should say, or whether it's the level 1 Scrum Master or level 1 product owner. My concern is that, and this was the question I was going to go with before, is that with the advent of AI and with AI really coming strong in these Agile environments, that I'm starting to see the need for some of these people with the level 1 credentials. A lot of the things that the level 1 credentials, for example, for a product owner that they taught you to do, could easily be done and supported using AI, using artificial intelligence, right? I can help identify personas. I can help write vision statements. And I'm not saying that you're putting all of your information publicly into a tool to do it. But what I am saying is that the skills and learning those skills has become so much easier with the augmentation of AI. So my question for each of you is, how have you seen AI impact Scaled Agile? How have you seen AI impact Stable? And what do you see in the future? Because from Scrum Alliance perspective, I'll answer first. I see that they've put together a module on AI integration and how AI and Scrum work together. And while I'll say it's a good quality production, I don't know that the level of information that I would have hoped for was available. There wasn't a whole lot of prompt sharing. It wasn't a whole lot. It talked about the importance of understanding AI, but it didn't go to the level of detail that I had hoped. So I've been doing a lot in my product owner classes, specifically my advanced product owner classes, where I'm teaching how to integrate AI and how artificial intelligence, and this is important for the people on the call who are looking for a new opportunity. If there's something that you can grab onto that's really going to help you accelerate your career path, you want to get either an advanced level certification or you want to understand AI implicitly and how it works with your current certifications. So for anyone on the call who's looking for a new job, so here's the question. Anyone who's looking for a new job, anyone who is currently in their job but they're concerned that they might be a victim of layoffs, what advice do you give them from your respective framework as far as what certifications do you feel would help them either get their next job or maintain their current job? And what do you feel AI has an impact? How has AI impacted that decision in that framework? So at this time, I'll start with, who did I start with last time? I think I started with John last time. I'll start with Heidi this time.
Oh, okay. Awesome. So one of the things that Scaled Agile has done is they've created an AI course. that you can actually take. And I have yet to take it, but they created an AR course. When it comes to the certifications and the things that are more sought after and demanded, typically you see a lot more product owner and scrum master and RTE. However, I think as you're growing and learning more, and organizations know more about what the frameworks are, they're looking for more of the advanced ones. So they're looking more for the RTEs, the advanced scrum masters, the agile product manager class, architecture class, and lean portfolio management. Anyone that can come in and really know how to do lean portfolio management is really valuable to an organization. And so to me, that one's really valuable if you not only can pass the exam and go through the class, but actually implement it and be able to communicate, why this adds value and why they should be doing it. So from a safe perspective, those are the things that are more valuable from my perspective, especially like participatory budgeting is really a big deal. Being able to make sure we are funding the most valuable work.
We have a question specifically for you, Heidi, that came from Facebook Live. So
Lovely.
the question is, you mentioned Agile Project Manager. The person says that term concerns them because it feels like it's a throwback to traditional project manager. How is an Agile Project Manager different than other roles within the Agile framework?
Yeah, I probably used the wrong word. Agile. Oh, product manager. Yeah, not project manager. Okay, good. Yeah, so Agile product manager is the person who's looking at the big picture in the SAFe framework. They're looking at, what is it that we need to do for an organization from our strategic themes and looking at the work we need to do and then taking that big chunk of work and then working with their product owners to help break it down as we go through our program increment and our, multiple program increments and looking at the bigger picture. Or at large organizations, we have to plan beyond just 1 or 2 program increments, maybe even a year. We have to look at 3 to 5 years out and think where we're going to go, where we think the economy is going to go, where is our market and our customer. And what's so great about that class is it talks about market sensing and looking at that market and really utilizing it to help you know where you need to go.
So I have a quick follow-up to that one myself. So is it safe, and no pun intended here, but is it safe for an organization to really try to plan 3 years out? I mean, I'm being honest. I mean, I know a lot of large organizations need to have some type of direction where they're going to go, but to what level of detail is it relevant? And I guess the question that came in any other channel was, how is this different than the PMI, PGMP, where you're talking about program management? If you're looking at a program management or at a portfolio level management, you're doing pretty much the same thing, or at least that's the impression. Is it different, or is it just a new agile application of those principles? Maybe, and I'm just throwing out an idea in case this caught you off guard. Maybe talk about, as part of lean portfolio management, a lot of times you talk about agile earned value and things along those lines. So how is the program management different from a traditional project management kit to what you just now described?
Yeah, so in the SAFe framework, if you look at lean portfolio management, you may still have a program manager, and what's value, what you need. It's not saying that this skill is no longer needed or no longer valued. You're really looking at the big picture, and you do need to plan 3 to 5 years out, not at this is the WBS level down to the hours and the minutes, but you do need to plan out hey, what are we going to be doing in the next 3 to 5 years? Where is our budget? What are the things that we're wanting to, roadmap out? Your high level strategic themes. If we're not thinking about that, then we're really not necessarily steering our train or our organization in a direction that will really help us be successful. So we have to have that high level vision and strategic themes. It doesn't mean, individual agile release trains have that low level of detail. It's more of at the higher level of the organization. We have to have that strategy of where we're going, or we're not going to be successful as companies.
Yeah, I really appreciate the way you went with that. It was, so as Eisenhower said, plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. And I think that the art of planning is something that we all forget about, right? And it doesn't mean, and I also love that you pointed out time. You brought out, it doesn't need to be hours, days, minutes. I'm going to go even further than that. I think anybody who is using time-based estimation at this point, you're crazy. It's just, the only thing that's true about time-based estimates is that over time they'll get worse. And I think part of it is the fact that individuals have different skill sets and different backgrounds and different techniques and different ways of doing things. So even if one iteration or one sprint, you have a team member who may be struggling to do something, the next sprint, they might be the expert at the topic that they pick, and they might be able to whip it out a lot faster. It's just one of those nuances that I've discovered where when you pull time out of the equation and you start looking at the value of the work, what is the scope of work? And you can start determining how much work can be consumed in an iteration at a team level. Sometimes that means that your best performer is going to go do all the easy stuff and let your weakest performer work on some of the more difficult stuff so they can grow their skill set and then meet them there to help them finish. Other times that means the best performer is going to work on hard stuff, the least experienced performer is going to work on the easy stuff, and they'll meet somewhere in the middle. But either way, they're still going to get the same amount of work done. And that's a concept that a lot of people get lost. So same original question, John. Nuances, how is Stable going to help someone get a new job, keep their job? And what nuances have you seen with AI?
So for the first, keeping a job, well, let's put this, to be completely transparent. I was actually in this position 4 months ago. I had hired a team of Agile Scrum Masters, and layoffs took the most expensive person out of the loop. So I actually leveraged, and this is how I got involved in Stable. I was looking at, okay, how can I build upon what I have in terms of certifications, and in one of the frameworks I had just about every certification you could get. And so I looked at Stable, it was brought to me, and I started talking with Mike Berry, who is I guess the father of Stable, and realized that there are potentials here that are skill sets that you can have. So for example, the process owner, that is not something that's in Scrum. It's not something that's in SAFe. The process owner is a role that manages the value stream from end to end. It is sort of like a release train engineer. It's sort of like a product owner, but it actually looks at value, delivering value from end to end. Not just the value of the product you're putting through, but the value of the process. And understanding the process is a skill set that, end to end, whether it's lean or not lean, is a challenge in most corporations right now, especially the large ones. This is, and there's a book called, and I can't think the name of the author, but This Isn't How We Do Things Here. It is an excellent book on overcoming objections, but that is the kind, and I've got it here in my bookshelf, but I'm not going to pull it out. But those are the kind of things you look at. And so this process owner in Stable gives you the background, gives you, again, it's a little bit of Agile, a little bit of operations, gives you that operational excellence background. So you can look at this process and say, this isn't working. This is what's not working. We should add this. And then Stable inherently gives you the attributes, the artifacts to plug into those processes to say this is better. And that's honestly, I leveraged those concepts after I certified it in Stable to land my next job. Now, as far as AI goes, I am dealing with the challenge because I was a data person. I was a data warehouse owner for a large computer corporation earlier in my career. And I am well aware of the lack of data cleanliness and good data for AI. And it all, how AI is going to affect things, I just don't know in terms of Scrum. I'm not going to comment on that because as far as I know, the data that we have, the data that would be in Jira, the data that we would have in ServiceNow, those tools is so discombobulated, I guess, that I don't know that it's going to help us right now. It's like I said, I'm a data person. AI is only good as the data you have in the background. So I think that we're a little bit further away from that because we're not putting good data in. So as we all know from back in the piece, the hard iron, GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. And that's what I'm seeing in the data everywhere I go.
And I'm gonna make an argument that I think AI is further along than everybody thinks it is. I really do believe that there's a lot of exciting things. But I will say this, that the part of AI that you just now talked about, the ethical part of AI, is not where it needs to be. And I think that if you're going into, and this is my instruction and I give to students when I do training on AI, if you're going in without any knowledge at all about the topic and you're trying to use AI as your sole source for the answer, you're in trouble, right? But if you're going in and you're saying, okay, I had this body of work and I have this body of knowledge, and I want you to AI become the expert in this field and guide me to give me additional information so that I can add value to what I already know to be true, that's where AI really helps. My only caveat and caution that I give to everyone in the AI world, and I'm going to make sure I give it here because this is the parental discretion as advised clause. Do not enter any proprietary data into any of the AIs, period. If you have proprietary data and you're putting it in, it is now public data. So, so with that being said, make sure that you're using good governance and good security background mindset when it comes to AI and application. But there's nothing stopping you if you have a solution or if you have a vision or strategy and you're trying to make it better and it doesn't contain names or proprietary companies or anything proprietary. There's no reason why you can't use AI to augment what you already know. And I think that if you leverage it, it's an incredible tool. Heidi, what were you going to add?
I was going to say, I had a professor when I was in my MBA program that he just put in his objectives inside of AI and was like, oh, that's pretty close to what my plan is. Cool. It was just kind of fun to see how you can utilize it to help you and augment your job. And so in his case, it's like, oh, okay, I looked and saw if there was any suggestions or recommendations, and then I went forward. It didn't have all my proprietary information, but it had, a lot of those concepts in there. And the same goes for, companies. You just have to be very cautious about, like you said, what you put in there.
And I'm going to follow on. You got to be careful what you put in there, but the data, but also if you want to leverage AI, one of the classes that outside of this is Boolean logic. If you can understand Boolean logic, you can leverage that in your text, and that will get you a lot better result.
So I'll just go on record and say that I don't believe that anyone, and call me out if I'm wrong, but I don't believe anyone in this conversation is an expert prompt writer, certified prompt writer, or anything like that. I mean, I can whip out a nice 12-page prompt. I'll tell you that now. I can do that. And I get some pretty crazy results, and I can have it automate and do some cool things. Mm-hmm. And I have leveraged AI a lot in my company to help me put together better exercises, to put together better examples, to put together some nondescript, especially if I get people coming from all different walks of life. Let's put together an exercise that incorporates this. I want this to be the end result. Here are the types of participants that are going to be participating. Help me put together a solid exercise that's going to help these participants understand better and reach this result. Please limit it to this time frame and do this, and it'll whip out ideas. And it's just like, oh man, this is incredible. But no one is going to be allowed to carry a firearm or practice medicine or practice law after executing that AI prompt. So as long as none of those things are true, then I believe that AI really can be used to really make things better. But just as all tools, I think that AI, if you use it correctly, it's going to be a powerful tool. If you use it incorrectly, it's going to be scrupulous, and you can use it to do some pretty naughty, wicked things. And we'll just leave it at that. All right. So I want to encourage one more time. We've only had a few questions that came in through Q&A. So if you're live on Facebook, or if you're here with us on the webinar, we want you to use that Q&A, and we are officially opening a Q&A to you right now. So this is your chance to ask questions about any of the three frameworks, to ask generic questions about our experience with Agile, to ask questions about things that are specifically applicable to what you're doing and how you're applying Agile. This is meant to be a roundtable discussion where you actively have a chance to engage with us. So instead of us rambling on, I want to make sure I give you a chance to do that. While I'm waiting for a couple of questions to come in, just for the record, this is the part where you type your question in a Q&A. Just want to make sure I told everybody that. So please type your questions now in a Q&A. While you're doing that, I did drop the link to Dean Leffingwell's book, Scaling Software Agility, in the chat. And I also dropped the link to The link to the other book on Amazon, That's How We Do It Here. So I wanted to make sure I threw that one in there as well.
And
so,
I dropped the Stable Framework book, Mike Berry's book.
Okay.
Well.
So that's a good book to drop in there as well. Yeah. Okay, looks like we're going to start seeing some Q&A coming in now. Very good. Here we go. I love the preface on this one. Asking for a friend, ... How can Agile support a change manager role for acquisitions and mergers? I want to say this real quick because I wrote this down and I forgot to mention it. Change management is really surging right now. I've seen a lot of, there's the Association of Change Management Professionals, the ACMP. The Utah chapter is exploding right now. I am about to give a big presentation at the Utah chapter coming up here soon. So their question is, how can Agile support a change manager role when it comes to acquisitions, mergers, etc.? Who has a little bit of change manager background and wants to answer that? Or if you want to push it to me, I'll take it.
I will. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, John.
John, you start, and then Heidi, I'll let you amend. Go.
Yeah. So Agile for change management is, again, you have to be nimble with change management. And because there's not a kata card for change management. However, if we're just talking about Agile, you can create a backlog. We're doing where I'm at now, we're doing an Agile transformation, and the Agile coaches are actually eating their own dog food and, creating stories, creating tasks. And you can use those things to maintain where you are, because you're going to map out a line process. It's just like a program increment or anything like that. You're going to map out that process, but bumps are going to come up and you're going to need to reprioritize. And so you keep adding, you keep refining your backlog, and you keep doing sprints, doing your time box, create that sense of urgency. So I absolutely use Agile for change management. I've done it for mergers and acquisitions. So that's me.
Yeah, my biggest thing, at least coming from a scaled Agile framework, is we build in change management into the framework. So we, follow the Cotter model of his 8 steps within the framework, and it's built in your journey. Other frameworks like ProSci and other things like that are absolutely great as well. They help you on your journey, and you need to have that as you're coming in and implementing change and putting Agile as a process in your organization. When it comes to mergers and acquisitions, using that iterative approach to review your work, oh my gosh, how amazing is that, to review what you're doing and get feedback early on, and then actually have a much better deciding factor on what you're going to purchase and merge and how you're going to make changes. That's huge. So that's my thought.
This warms my heart. So someone followed up immediately after and said, I've been working formally as an org change manager and informally as a project/program manager. I'm considering various certifications, ProSci, PMP, Scrum, Agile, etc., to get back to work faster. Any thoughts on what might be my best first step?
ProSci is a really great model, and a lot of big organizations use it. So I know that one is one I would recommend. Understanding the Cotter model, I don't know if he has certifications, but his model is really great as well. So that's probably my recommendation.
Yeah, there are, and that's specific to change management, right? Yeah, so there are other certifications out there as well. So but like I said, I'm gonna second and say ProSci is definitely very good. It's the direction I would go if I were extending and staying in a change manager role. Many of the large organizations lean in on ProSci, so that's definitely something. The other thing that I would encourage you to do is go to your acmp.org, your Agile Change Management Professional grouping, and there's probably a local chapter where you are, and make sure you step in and join that local chapter. It's very inexpensive, but it may give you another channel to network, because your network is your net worth. It'll give you a channel to network with other change management professionals and maybe see what that next opportunity is. Another thing that I will strongly encourage you to do, I know that the Utah chapter is going to be broadcasting so it's going to be done live here in Salt Lake City, but they're also going to be broadcasting my presentation, and it's going to talk a lot about this topic. So I want to encourage you, if you reach out to me, I'll make sure I can get you a copy of the link that you can join that presentation, maybe over Zoom or whatnot, so that you can see what's going on, because I really do think that'll add a lot of value. So my only thought here is, if you are coming at Agile for the first time, so if you've been a project and program manager and you're just not familiar with Agile, please, please, please go do the Agile Foundations or Fundamental course first, either on Scrum Alliance or somewhere else. I don't care where, just go do it. And then, and that's free. It costs $0. It's just a little bit of your time. You need to do that first. The second baby step would be to kind of determine where you want your role to go. Typically, people who are in change management roles make really good master chiefs. They make really good release train engineers. They also make really strong product owners. But you kind of have to decide what your jam is, what your path is. If you're somebody who really likes to engage and get along with people, then maybe you want to go more to Scrum Master route and stick with your project management principles. If you feel like you're a stronger program manager and you're a good change manager, then you definitely want to go either product or release route, right? And the Master Chief is just someone who is more of a leader throughout in a stable framework. So I think any of those three would be a next best step after you have the foundations or fundamentals in place, because it's important to have that first. So fundamentals first, then go with the role-based. Everybody good with that? Because we only have a couple of minutes left, so I want to hit another couple of questions here. All right, so we have another question. It says, big fan of the podcast. Thank you. I appreciate it. So the podcast, we celebrated 1,000 episodes on the podcast, 1,000 episodes last Friday. So that's huge. What are your thoughts about the Advanced Scrum Master certification before doing the Agile Release Train certification? Good question. The Advanced Scrum Master certification, I think, is important for the very reason that Heidi mentioned earlier. And let me explain what I mean by that. The Advanced Scrum Master certification, at least my Advanced Certified Scrum Master certification, talks about what you do as a Scrum Master to help support product ownership. So when Heidi was saying that they send a lot of their people through the product owner training first, this is what she was referring to. It almost means that you have to understand some of those fundamental things that a product owner does as a Scrum Master and how you support them. And I think that that would be a good springboard for you to go to the RTE. Heidi, do you have anything to add there, since it's specifically about RTE?
Yeah, so there is a Safe Advanced Scrum Master course as well, which I think is really great if you're acting as a Scrum Master. It really takes the Scrum Master class that they have and adds steroids to it. It really makes you think a lot more about it. So if you're heading down the path of, you really want to be an amazing Scrum Master, to me, that's a great class. And then if you're really looking for, longer term opportunities, the RTE class is really stepping into, a Scrum Master on more steroids. That's kind of how I like to say it, because it's a lot more work and it's a lot more coordination. And so, personally, if you're as a Scrum Master and you're wanting to be there for a little while, start with the Advanced Scrum Master, and then from there go to the RTE. If you're really wanting to jump in deep and go into the RTE class, then jump on in. That's what I did. It's great.
I love it. Yeah. And it is. It's true. If you know that you're going to go the RTE route, jump RTE all the way. Just do it. And I will confess, though, that sometimes you might drown if you don't have a strong foundational. So I'll put it this way. If you had a really good level 1 Scrum Master trainer and you have a really strong foundation, you could probably do okay just going straight to RTE. If you felt like you struggled a little bit applying the concepts that you learned from your Scrum trainer, you probably want to go back and get that advanced class first, because I think that would be so that was good advice, Heidi. I'm glad I asked you. So let's go to the next one. We have another question. We're trying to make sure we stay under our hour. It says, speaking of mergers and acquisitions, what are your suggestions for dealing with scenarios where the companies coming together use different Agile frameworks? So navigating a leadership role, or as an individual contributor, if you have one, you're doing a merger and acquisition and somebody's doing SAFe, somebody's doing Stable, somebody's doing Scrum Alliance, somebody's doing Scrum.org, PSM, whatever it is, and you got a whole bunch of PMPs running around going, right? How do you navigate that type of situation? What advice would you give?
Change management. Bring all the leaders together and have a change management discussion. Build that guiding coalition of leaders together to head you down that path. To decide, where is it from the broader organization is going to be the most valuable to go. I saw that in the past with one of my organizations, and we embraced it. We had, multiple frameworks within our organization already, and we embraced their new framework, and we still use it, and it's great. We use it as an opportunity to continuous improve for those who aren't using it.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely awesome that without even trying, we went down a change management path, because it seems like that's something that a lot of people are seeing. And there's a lot of resurgence. It's funny because I'm almost seeing organizations lean in and say, we need people who kind of look and feel more like project managers. We need people who look and feel and understand change management. And this is a great opportunity for all three of us, for Scaled Agile to tap into that and to tap into augmentation with AI, to change management and champion that, because right now change management is definitely one of the hottest topics out there. With regard to Stable, I know Mike has done a good job of talking about how the bridge has formed and how Stable can help really support you through your change management by making sure, and I love this quote that he always says, he wants to make sure that you're not feeding the hidden factory, that you're not making the same mistakes over and over again, and that you found ways to come up with that solution. And with regard to Scrum Alliance, they're I don't want to say they're biding their time, but they're on cruise control a little bit with regard to this, which is concerning. But this is one of the reasons why it's so important, if you're going to a Scrum Alliance training, that you select the right trainer and the right training organization. Because if you do, you'll get all the details and things you need in an advanced course. Where if you don't, if you're just sticking to the very basics of these are the learning objectives, you may feel like you were disappointed by what you received. So it's important for you to make sure you pick an organization that you trust. So it's about that time for us to close. So I'm just going to leave one final thought. That final thought is, all of these classes, if you wanted to find out more about Stable and learn more about how Stable operates and what it is, we have a whole listing of classes on the AgileDad website that you can go to on the events page. If you're interested in taking Scaled Agile courses, we have an army of trainers. Currently, we have 3 that are available as SPCs to help guide you down that path. And we have a lot of people asking us specifically for private courses, which I think is super cool. So we get a lot of people who are asking us to come in and help their organization really understand scaling better. And then, of course, if you're interested in the Scrum Alliance courses, we have all of those listed. The one that I would recommend right out of the gate is that new coaching facilitator class. I really do feel like it's going to give a lot of value, regardless of which of these paths you take. It's going to give you a ton of value, and I think that's where you lay your nest egg first, in my opinion. So that's going to do it for our hour. Heidi, I appreciate you, John. It's been awesome. This has been an amazing workshop. If you have other topics that you think would be important for us to discuss in the future, feel free to reach out to us. Learn more at AgileDad.com. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, we encourage you to stay agile, stay healthy, and stay well. Take care, my friends. Thanks, Heidi. Thanks, John. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.